I have a very different view of Van Jones. You can go check our feed to find out why, but I think he's been extremely cowardly around the Charlie situation. He was like, oh, I wouldn't have gone on his show. I wouldn't have platformed him.
I was thinking of that. I don't know his name, but there's a progressive influencer who I'd never heard of before that Charlie was going to debate, who immediately was like, this is horrifying.
Was it Hassan Piker?
Yeah. I think that guy.
Yeah, okay. Because Van Jones, I think, has really been cowardly. He really, truly, he called Charlie a racist based on nothing. Van had his facts wrong. Charlie made a comment that there was a racial element, it appeared, in North Carolina with the slaying of Irina. And Van hadn't done his homework and apparently hadn't heard that man who was black killing a white woman had said, "I got that white girl."
Yeah. He's muttered it on video. This is when I called Charlie Kirk when we first learned of the Kirk shooting. I remember I mentioned this CNN segment. I was just watching it from the night before when they all were condemning Charlie as a racist.
So if you were Van Jones and honorable, what would you do? Especially after Charlie had been killed, you would say, "I am so sorry." I don't blame Van Jones for Charlie's murder, just to be clear, and he didn't need to apologize for Charlie's murder. But for calling him a racist the 2 nights before that he was murdered, yeah, he should apologize for that, with or without the murder, because it was a smear and it was wrong. It was based on erroneous facts. So, of course, every time as somebody who's in news, you have to come out and say, I was wrong. I didn't know about what that black man had said. And I apologize for Charlie for saying something about him that has no basis in fact. He wouldn't. Instead, he wanted credit for outing Charlie for doing a nice thing, because Charlie had reached out to him and said, "Hey, let's have a good faith debate. As men, let's have an honorable debate." And Van Jones didn't get back to him. He wants us to believe that he didn't know about it until after Charlie died. I don't believe that either. I've got my reasons, but I don't trust Van Jones' word. And now he's continuing on this grift of trying to look like somebody who's going to uphold Charlie's legacy. He's going to be the good guy by saying a couple of nice things about Charlie after Charlie died. Meanwhile, the story is he's a bad guy for smearing Charlie as a racist while he was alive and causing him strife within the last 48 hours of his life, and then not owning up to his erroneous smear when it was clear to everybody that's what it was. And so now he goes on with Bill Maher, and Bill gives him the benefit of the doubt and says, "Oh, you probably would have debated him, right?" Meanwhile, Van's already on the record as having said, I wouldn't have gone on his show and build his platform. And listen to how Van Jones compliments Charlie. Take a listen here. This is Friday night.
Would you have agreed to debate Charlie Kirk? I bet you I know the answer, and I bet you the answer is yes. Because that's the kind of guy you are.
Yeah. Listen, Charlie Kirk and I were not friends. And we were in a big public fight the week that he died. And it turned out that the day before he died, he sent me a personal message wanting me to come on his show. And he said, let's be gentlemen. He said, let's disagree agreeably. Let's disagree agreeably. I'm going to carry those words with me because he was a words, not weapons guy. I disagree with his words. He's a words, not weapons guy. And we're getting away from that now. And I was very frustrated at people in my party throwing rocks at the corpse before he could even be buried. Blood still on the widow's shoes. And people want to post every dumb thing he ever said. He was a 31-year-old kid.
Right.
If you got me at 31 years old, I was on the left side of Pluto. There is no telling what you would have had me say. So let's give some grace and some space, even to our enemies and our adversaries.
Okay. He should have stopped after the words widow's shoes. And we would have had no problem with what he said there, other than the ones I already outlined. Instead, he had to go on to say people are posting every dumb thing he ever said. This is a 31-year-old kid. It's pejorative. He's trying to put Charlie down. He's trying to diminish him. This is classic Van Jones, trying to act like he's this person giving grace when what he's actually doing is insulting Charlie. 31 years old is not a kid. All of our founding fathers were younger than that when they drafted our documents, our founding documents, most of them. And Charlie lived a life just like those founders. Charlie was self-educated. Charlie was a man of the world. Charlie spent his life in flyover country trying to understand the issues that were affecting actual Americans. Charlie was a far more articulate spokesperson for the causes he believed in than Van Jones could ever hope to be, ever. They weren't errant, stupid tweets by a kid that the left was freaking out about. They were thoughtful policy positions as a grown man that Charlie professed that most of us on the right wholeheartedly agreed with. And there is no cause to diminish them or him. It is truly part of an ongoing smear campaign, but Van Jones is more clever about it than Nicole Hannah-Jones. To me, it's infuriating. He was not some kid. He did not need Van Jones to run cover for him on his tweets. Van Jones, just stop talking about Charlie Kirk. Just stop. Unless you're going to say you apologize, I don't want to hear from you anymore. And I'm pretty sure I speak for most of the right wing on that. Just stop it. Okay, sorry, but I had to get that out there. It's been driving me nuts since I saw it on Friday night. But let's go to Jay Jones, because a different Jones, Jay Jones, who's running for Attorney General of Virginia. And Charlie, I read at length from your piece on this show yesterday about how you believe his text messages in your title reveal a disqualifying worldview. I want to tell the audience before I toss it to you that we've now heard that there was more to the Jay Jones exchanges with this Republican, Kerry Coyner, who he had spoken to earlier before these texts. And you see actually a reference in his texts to that conversation. He says something like, I've told you before,
right, yeah.
Like I'm only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. And so to their credit, a local news organization called the Virginia Scope called up Kerry Coyner and said, what's that a reference to? What was that conversation? Good question. And she told them. She said that we had a pretty heated conversation about public policy and pain involving qualified immunity for cops. He believed that they should not have qualified immunity. And I said, I believe that people will get killed. Police officers will get killed. And he said, well, maybe if a few of them died, they would move on, not shooting people, not killing people. And I said, that's insane. But he firmly believed that if you removed qualified immunity, police officers would act differently. And I firmly believed it would not result in good public policy, and it would put police officers and the public lives at risk. So then Jones told the Virginia Scope, I did not say this, which is really hard to believe, given his other statements that he has to admit to, because we've seen the text messages where he calls for the then Republican Speaker of the House to have 2 bullets put in his brain, along with his children to die, young children to die in their mother's arms, and that the parents should have to watch it, and doubled down when the Republican he was texting to said, this is really offensive, there's something wrong with you, called her up, said it again, resumed the text thread, said it again. So now this guy comes out, would love to see cops get shot too. And so far, we cannot find a single Democrat politician who is calling for him to step down, Charlie.
Right. The reason this is so alarming, as you imply, is that this seems to be the product of a considered worldview. People do get angry or upset or emotional, and they send hyperbolic text messages or tweets. Now, I will say that I don't send people text messages fantasizing about the murder of politicians or their children, but I am, as a flawed person, willing to grant some latitude, less so perhaps for people who want to be an attorney general, but some latitude for those who make a mistake, providing that it is a mistake, providing that it is acknowledged and reversed. We have all had conversations with people in our lives who have said something awful, then been called on it, and then said, all right, I got upset, or at least apologized for it. But what we seem to be looking at here is somebody who has said this same thing in various fora. By the time he gets in that text thread to saying, yes, we've talked about this before, and then articulating the theory, which is people need to die so that my politics can prevail. He's already said it once by text message and then said it on the phone. And then we learned that he also said the same thing about cops. And what that tells me is this is his politics. Now, that's not illegal in America. You can have horrendous views, but you really should not be the top law enforcement official in the state of Virginia if that is your view. And I draw this distinction in general, Megyn. I've talked about this on my own podcast with race. I have met people in my life who had bigoted views. The people who had never really thought it through, although I didn't like them or what they were saying, didn't particularly bother me. People who maybe inherited bad views from their family or got angry about something or just were egged on by their friends. And then you say, I really don't think that's a nice way of looking at the world. And they go, all right. That's one thing. What is really alarming is when you meet the guy with the charts, when you meet the guy who's a zealot, when you meet the guy who's into race science, or the guy who has a long-standing and well-considered opinion on why Jews are bad. Those people scare me because those people are not being carried away by the moment. They are making a political play. And look, Jay Jones, although he wasn't doing it publicly, was making a political play. That is a political attitude. And it's one that is frankly at odds with the way that America is set up. All of our presumptions. We don't allow that. You can hold those views, but you can't make them consistent with the American system of government or with the fundamental presumptions of the West. You don't get to kill people because you don't like their politics. You don't get to kill their children because you don't like their parents' politics. You don't get to hurt people so that they will see or discover or learn that they were wrong all along. This should be disqualifying without any qualifications. This person should have dropped out. Everyone should have told him to drop out. It is more important than partisan control. And again, the person that Jay Jones is running against, despite Abigail Spanberger's rhetoric, is actually not Donald Trump. It's Jason Miyares, who is a center-right, moderate, competent, current attorney general in Virginia, who is clearly preferable from any political perspective than someone who wants to put bullets in the brain of his opponents.
Just another word on Jay Jones and why I don't believe his current denial that he didn't say that about wanting to see cops die. A Richmond Times-Dispatch investigation published just last week on him found that in 2022, Jones was convicted in a reckless driving case after he was pulled over driving 116 miles per hour, which was 46 miles per hour above the speed limit. So that means the speed limit was 65. Pretty sure that's 65. That's 116 and a 65. But here's the thing. I don't condone the speeding, nor have I ever driven over 100 miles an hour in my life. But his punishment was a $1,500 fine and 1,000 hours of community service, 500 of which he spent working for his own political action committee. So he's not an honest guy, Rich. The only reason he admitted to saying he wanted to put 2 bullets in the head of the Republican House Speaker was because it was written. And there was a fellow congresswoman there attesting that the texts were real, that he called her and doubled down, that he resumed the text chain and tripled down about wanting the man's children's dead too. So this guy, he's a reckless driver. He's a liar. He wants cops dead, Republicans dead, and Republican children dead. And I'm sorry to make it all about Neera Tanden. We played this yesterday, but here was Neera Tanden excusing it on Meet the Press.
And there's not one national Democrat calling for him to step aside. Not one. It's disgraceful.
I absolutely think people should criticize that 100%. I think it was a private conversation he had, but still awful and disgusting. We should condemn that, but then you should condemn when the president calls the Democratic Party the party of Satan.
Yeah, in all fairness.
Why don't we just say both of those things?
I think I've paid the price for standing for political violence on our side.
Mike Pence is the chief of staff. It's a private conversation, Rich, private. Did you know gold is up around 40% this year? That's not speculation, it's reality. And if a portion of your savings is not diversified into gold, you are missing the boat. Here are the facts. Inflation is still too high. The US dollar is still too weak. And the government debt is still growing. This is why central banks are flocking to gold. They're the ones driving prices up to record highs. But it's not too late to buy gold from Birch Gold Group and get in the door now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into one in gold. You don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. The best indicator of the future is the past, and gold has historically been a safe haven. Text MK to 989898 right now to claim your free info kit on gold. MK to 989898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.